Hi there, and welcome to the Vendor Introduction Series brought to you by the Cyberhut. My name is Simon Moffat. I'm founder and analyst at the Cyberhut. And in our Vendor Introduction Series, I get to interview amazing leaders of a whole host of global identity security startups to understand a little bit more about their mission and vision. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Tim from Anetac with me. Tim, thanks for joining me.
Simon, very nice to be here.
Not at all. I get the easy job of just asking the questions. So I appreciate taking a bit of time out from the busy sort of startup world of trying to change how we do things and trying to solve some of today's complex problems. And for those who've not seen one of these episodes before, I essentially get to ask the same three questions of our esteemed guests. And I always start with the same question, which is essentially, what is the problem that Anetac is trying to solve?
Yeah, always important to do that. So we started this company out. This is my fourth company as a CEO, and we started this company by interviewing 35 different security execs around the world. And what we wanted to understand is, look, you've got network scanning for vulnerabilities that's been around for 20 plus years. You got application vulnerability scanning. Ron Gula, my friend, started that 20 years ago. What about identity vulnerability management? And tell me about on-prem. Tell me about cloud. What do the regulators think about it? What do they used to think about it? What do they think about it in the future? Is this problem growing? Why do you care about it? Why do you care about it now? And so what we do is we do identity-based vulnerability management. We go in and we discover on-prem and cloud, the soft underbelly, the hygiene elements that have been out there for 10 years, 20 years, sometimes 30 years of these service accounts and these human IDs, because you have to do human and non-human, because sometimes a developer will go rogue and use their credentials as a service account, but also there's big gaps in the JML program, joiners, movers, leavers. So what happens is you sit in this world because no one's connecting their Workday with their Active Directory, with their IGA tool. So what do? Vulnerability management for identities. We discover, we monitor, we manage those things and help people take care of the soft underbelly as it relates to identity management.
I love that, the soft underbelly. I love that. I think it's an interesting thing, isn't it? I think if we look at things like endpoint security or even data security, network security, we've had all these products that do vulnerability scanning and exposure management and application vulnerability management. It always seems to me that identity was neglected. It seemed to be this entity, if you like, which it didn't have that vulnerability sort of discovery tooling there. It was always this sort of neglected item, if you like. And I think now,
but you can't ignore it now, right? You can't ignore it now. I mean, if you follow Satya at Microsoft, applications are going to fade in value, fade in presence, and CRUD's going to go away, right? So agentic architectures are all identities. You need to monitor these. You need to manage these. You need to control the behaviors of these things, because obviously an agent is basically a representation of a human could go rogue, right?
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating thing. I quite liked noted down. You mentioned human and non-human, and obviously agentic as well. It seems to be more and more identity types proliferating, and it sounds like you're covering all angles there.
Yeah, you kind of have to, right? I mean, I am completely shocked about how bad the JML programs are in enterprises. Like, wherever we deploy the product, we see credentials set never to expire. Dormancy of like 30%, typically maybe 40%, and just horrendous credential management.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a very exciting space. I think it's good that we now have the lens being shone, if you like, on this potential explosion, if you like, of vulnerabilities. So I guess it sort of draws me into this second question, really, is why is this a problem? Now, is it just the fact that identity is more important than it ever was? We have different identity types. You mentioned sort of agents and NHI. Is it legacy tech which just can't cope with this? A combination? What's your sort of view here?
This is a really great question. So when we were starting out the company, we were like, okay, where was the problem 2 years ago? Where would the problem be in 2 years' time? What did the regulators think about it in 2 years' time? What do they think? Where were they? Where was this proliferation? And so I think I think there's two parts to this. One is the tools are available to solve it, right? I mean, if you went back, let's say you went back 14, 15 years ago, um, no one was using graph databases and time series to solve any of these problems. Therefore, the rise of the tools to solve it gives you, these tools are critical to understanding context and behaviors of things. Otherwise, you're shooting things or trying to remove things without the context. And without that chain of understanding, you will remove things that have a business impact. So the rise of a graph database running as a SaaS service, understanding time, right? Service accounts and human and non-human stuff are not static things. You need to understand behaviors. Without understanding behaviors of things, through time, you will not have a true understanding of what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So I think job one is these tools are available, right? Absolutely critical. And then job two is, we all know every single breach just about is leveraging an identity that gets compromised. So you've got this great opportunity to go build companies to solve real problems for real customers. We do it for colleges and banks and airlines and mining companies and all these different types of things. But you've got a combination and a great opportunity because of the tool availability, right? And the applicability to a problem. And actually now you can actually go after something where, stop the breaches, right? Reduce your attack service and solve the problem.
I think it is fascinating, isn't it? The fact that it applies now to so many different geographies, different sectors, different sizes of businesses.
It's not a someone problem; it's an everyone problem.
It's exactly what I was getting to today. It's an everyone problem. And I think it's 15 years ago, identity was the LDAP guy and the sort of IGA guy doing workforce identity, typically for mid to large enterprises within whatever financial services or regulated industry. Now identity and the vulnerabilities proliferate across all sectors and all sizes of businesses.
And you find these things, I mean, we do assessments, right? We do 7 to 14-day assessments, and we pop out these reports, and the credentials, these are 10 years old, 19 years old, 25 years old.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
All right, then. So it sort of ties me into the sort of third areas. It sounds like you've done a lot of thinking and a lot of working and understanding this space. So what is the sort of Anetac secret sauce here? Why are you guys best placed to tackle this, and how are you going to tackle it?
I think that there's 3 reasons why I think we're the best place to solve it. Number one is customer centricity. By starting off the company so detailed around the customer problem, on-prem and cloud, and SCADA networks and everything, documenting that problem inside out, back to front, is absolutely key. Even when we were the product was being built, the gestation period, we would have these meetings 1 or 2 a day with customers, and one of them, the famous guy in banking in New York, just tore us to shreds one day. No one's going to use that. Use it this way. And so the centricity of the company around solving it, and understanding it and solving it that way, I think is key. The other one, I think, I personally believe, it's very easy to build a cloud-only company right now, but we have the experience. A lot of the team have worked together for 10, 12, 15 years of understanding graph databases at massive scale and making the problem simple to a customer. So I think the customer centricity, but also the simplicity of the product to solve it. 85% of the people that touch the product buy the product. And so that goes to, hey, do you understand the problem? But also, do they understand that you can solve it and you can show value around it? And I think the third one is, it does help. It's my 4th company as CEO. I'm on the board of 2 or 3 others, and you just understanding of how to access markets. I mean, one of the biggest problems a startup has, I think maybe the biggest one, is sometimes aligning vocabulary and getting the terminology correct to the budget, to the owner. You could be the best guy in the world, but if your vocabulary doesn't match, it's not just the best tech often fails. It's because you can't explain it. And so I think those are the 3 elements that will set us apart.
That's fascinating. I think as identity has become this fulcrum, if you like, around business productivity, clearly the security angle now is heavily reliant on identity, but it can also be used in quite successfully for revenue generation, delivering online services and everything else. And I think what has been difficult historically is to describe the value of identity. As you say, perhaps it's a language aspect, getting the right stakeholders, the right tools, and then measuring what identity is doing. And I think there's definitely this perfect storm of the popularity of identity, the proliferation of identity types, NHIs, workloads, agentic AI, which is clearly going to proliferate hugely over the next 12 months or so. But as you say, it needs this blanket of vulnerability management, vulnerability discovery. There's a whole host of fundamental issues which I think need to be solved. And I think there's huge opportunity because, again, it isn't just one sector niche. It has the potential to be broad and platform-led. Exciting stuff. Well, listen, thanks for taking a little bit of time out to give us a bit of a brief update as to how this works. I think it's a very exciting area. I think it's a problem statement which will continue to grow, and I think it will attract different stakeholders into this equation as well. I think there's security benefits, there's identity benefits, there's other parts of the sort of broader technology lifecycle, perhaps DevOps, SecDevOps as well, getting benefits. So I think it's a really huge addressable market. So thank you for taking a little bit of time out. Appreciate that, and it's always exciting and difficult to launch these things and introduce, as you said, new terms and new value statements and the like. So thank you, Tim, for taking a bit of time out. Thank you to the audience for watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you again soon.